What up, though? Good evening. This is the episode 10. We're now in double digits. Welcome to the Roar of the Lions UK Wednesday weekly college show. You'll notice, like say, that our usual host, Ant, isn't here. He's got other priorities, so I am going to take over the reins, and I'm followed by my co-host and colleague, Matthew Turner, this evening for his first trot out onto the college world. How are you doing, Matthew?
Doing well, thanks, Ryan. Another cracking week of college football. Can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, like you say, there was some more upsets. Like I say, I'll go into the news quickly because there was quite a lot by, I'd say, news standards. I'll start off with the fact that we had another head coach casualty, high profile. That is Matt Wells from the Texas Tech Red Raiders. He has finished his career with a 13-17 overall record. He only went 7-16 in Big 12 play. Despite starting the season pretty well this year, he lost his, I'd say relative starting quarterback, Tyler Shook, to injury. The Oregon transfer got down to Henry Colombi, but it's not all bad news because I've read he's estimated a $7 million buyout. He was well into that contract, so he's going to be sipping margaritas on a nice beach at the end of the year, like say, so it's okay for him. Other news, the Hawaii Rainbow Raiders this week they've put in retirement for the number 15 for their late quarterback Colt Brennan. Unfortunately, we lost this year, so that number is now retired. Speaking of head coach vacancies, it's linked to the NFL, but I don't know if anyone's seen that Mike Tomlin, someone asked him about the reports of the USC job, and he took offense to that. He didn't take it kindly at all. He said that he's got one of the best jobs in the league, so why would he want to leave it? And he stated as saying there isn't a booster in college football with a check big enough that could lure him away, like say, and he's one of the prominent coloured, like say, head coach positions right now in a striving league. So he doesn't look like he's ready to step in away time soon. And he seemed quite offended by all the rumours. He shut that down. Then we go on to a bit of controversy. I found that the Ivy League officials this week have put out a statement apologising for a decision that was made that cost the Harvard football team a win against Princeton. They were both 5-0, and in overtime, in the fifth period, they threw a successful 2-point conversion to take the lead. But after the play had ended, there was a review to say that Princeton called a timeout before the play. By rule states, and only an on-field official can call that, and it must be during the play. They made them replay it, and they missed. So they went on to lose the game, and they lost their unbeaten record. So they've had to come out and lick their wounds and say sorry. Further news, like say, undefeated teams. You can now count how many teams there are in the league in two hands. We've lost two more. We're down to 9. The Coastal Carolina Chanticleers and Oklahoma State. So we're now down to 9 teams that have got a goose egg on the end of the record. Like I say, the curse of 18 still exists as well. I've mentioned this for 6 weeks in a row now. The team ranked 18 has lost. That was NC State this weekend. They're the 6th different side. Like I say, and up this weekend is another side now. Auburn have moved into 18. So if you're a betting man, I'd like to think people that should be backing against them because it looks like it's quite punishing. And the final bit of news this week is Southern Miss. That now Conference USA have confirmed 6 new arrivals starting in the year 2023. They're emptying other conferences like the MAC, and Southern Miss are the latest team to join up. So they're bolstering their ranks in Conference USA, and they'll have 5 more new sides entering from the next 2 years. So it's been a very busy week, like I say, on playing, on and off the field, bit of controversy. Head coach jobs, like I say, are becoming available now. It's that time where teams are firing coaches that don't get bowl eligible or getting a bit rocky. So it's been a very busy week in college football, I must say.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine how Matt Wells could have had a better start to the season and kept his job. Like, it seems like they'd already decided before the season that unless they were in contention for playoffs, that he was gone. So I'm a bit surprised by that, really. Seems like a decision you could have made in the off-season.
It does, yeah. Like you said, they had a new quarterback coming in, so what a great situation. But then they've let him start the year. He got to 5-3, so they were looking okay. Like I said, they've skidded now. Like I say, lost 2 or 3 on the bounce, and they've pulled the trigger. especially if we knew that much money was due and you had to buy out his deal. I certainly would not have signed him now. Like I say, that's a lot of money for, like I say, to lose as a franchise and as a program. They're going to have to recoup those losses somewhere. So who knows where they go from here.
Well, I know that they've got their last 4 games against ranked opponents, but you're basically saying to your team, I don't believe you can win another game. We're not getting to a bowl game, so let's throw in the towel now. It just seems madness.
Yeah, like you say, they're basically just going to roll over, have their bellies tickled potentially by 4 ranked sides, and it just doesn't look good, does it? Like you say, the fans, it hurts. They've got some players, like I mentioned one last week, like Eric Eason-Karma, the wide receiver. It doesn't do well for him going into the draft. Like I say, now this level of uncertainty. There were some high-profile injuries as well this week. In one of the biggest upset of the week, the Illinois Fighting Illini, I think it's pronounced, lost their starting quarterback, Artur Sitkowski. Like I say, ultimately it didn't cost them on the day, but it appeared it's a season-ending injury. So any momentum they've built now, unfortunately, looks to be starting again. Now they're going to have to find a backup. Someone that was mentioned also in previous draft shows for Detroit, Miami Hurricanes have lost their starting strong safety, Bubba Bolden, for the end of the year. He was a tackle machine. He's now got a season-ending injury, like say going to 2021, 2022 draft. So that hurts his stock a little bit. He was having a fairly productive year and a bad team, but it's a shame for them to lose them because nothing has gone right for them this year. But one thing went right that we'll get into it later, which is kind of a perk for them. And unfortunately for Ant, one of his favourite players of the year has gone down with injury, unfortunately. Adafan Olafoshio, the Washington Huskies star linebacker, has been confirmed that his season is over. He has already racked up multiple tackles for loss. He's one of the leaders on that defense, one of their best prospects going into the draft. And for a season that has severely underwhelmed for them in the Pac-12, it's just another kick in the teeth, unfortunately. So these are 3 fairly high-profile losses for teams that all had decent weeks. So it really does kind of take the shine off what they were able to achieve this week, unfortunately.
I mean, maybe not the worst thing for Ulafosho if it's an arm injury. Potentially, that's not going to affect his draft stock too much. He's had a good season so far, and maybe it's just not the worst thing for him in the world. But Bubba Bolden with a season-ending shoulder injury, I mean, can't think of many worse injuries for a strong safety. Like, if you're going to be going in there in the box and stopping the run, your shoulders are getting a lot of work, and that's a really hard one to take for them.
Yeah, like I say, he was a leader on the back end, and right now they're shy of leaders. This is just another injury that compounds a bad year. He was a tackle machine. Like I say, he looked like he had some sort of potential going in, so it's very worrying for them. But like I say, with Edafan, the team didn't look great this year. Maybe, like I say, shut him down. He can get healthy now, hopefully prepare for a combine. For him, it's probably not the worst thing in the world, like I say, to shake things up, like I say. So those were the unfortunate injuries for this year. Now, there was some high-profile, more ranking losses in this week, so we can now start to look at some of the fixtures. As we mentioned last week, after the pod, which was a day late, that there was a game that evening, and that was Appalachian State versus Coastal Carolina. We said it was going to be a great game, and it delivered. But not surprising to me, but to shock the world, the Coastal Carolina lost their unbeaten record. Like I say, they went down 30-27 to the Mountaineers, who are led by former Clemson and Duke quarterback Chase Bryce. I managed to catch some of this. It was a close game back and forth, but in the end, they just could not get over the line, couldn't get into field goal range, anything to tie the game up. And it was quite a painful loss, but to a very good team, like I say. So that was one of the unbeaten teams that fell. I don't know if you managed to catch it. I've seen the highlights, Matthew.
I haven't, but just looking at the stats, you can just see where the problems were for Coastal Carolina. They couldn't stop the run. For all Bryce doing his good work in the passing game, it was the fact that Coastal Carolina's defense just went to pot. I know in the pod last week you said that these were 2 really high-scoring teams, but one consistently delivered and managed to control the game, and Coastal Carolina couldn't deliver at the end. I think it was a game-winning field goal right at the end. And, it's a good team, Appalachian State. They surprised some people, perhaps, but not me. really have come to play this year.
Yeah, they have. Like I say, in the last few years, they're becoming more relevant. Like I said, them and Liberty are two of the newest members to the FBS, I believe. And since then, Appalachian State, they've been holding their own for the last few years. They've been building up wins. Like you say, it was a game where they controlled the clock perfectly. They ran the ball, and they knew that they'd get just enough time to kick a game-winning field goal, and they didn't leave any time on the clock for them to respond. So it was a good statement win for that program.
I mean, never mind that as well. In the Sun Belt, they're in the Sun Belt, aren't they? I'm not going mad.
Yes, they are. Yes.
Yeah. So Appalachian State, even though they're 5-2 and Coastal Carolina are 6-1, because they have the same record in their conference now, Appalachian State, if they win out, will win that half of the conference. So, you know, Coastal Carolina, from going unbeaten, have kind of not lost everything because it's college football, but you know, their fate is no longer in their own hands. As versus Appalachian State as well, Appalachian State go above them in that conference. It was a massive game.
Yeah, like I say, it was a rivalry game, even if it wasn't intended to be. Like I say, it did have those Sun Belt implications, which is always big, especially for teams like this at Power 5, non-Power 5.
Oh, you've just gone on me. Hang on.
Trying to ring. Like I say, and for some reason it's muting me. So apologise for this, anyone watching live. No, like I say, Sun Belt implications were always big. Like I say, they've got to jump up on a rival now when this is a potential championship game.
Someone's very keen to have a word with Ryan.
Sorry about this, everyone. Like I say, it's how it works. If it keeps trying to ring me, it's a number. It just keeps muting me, unfortunately.
You're a man in demand. I don't know if you can turn on D&D or something, and maybe it wouldn't do it. I don't know.
Let me have a look.
I don't know if you do those sort of beating of the weeks, upset statement of the weeks at the top of this or at the end, but I could go through them while you're sorting that.
Like I say, I do have the statement of beating of the week. Yes, I say, I can go for that. Say before the game. So the statement of the week, largest win, we will give to Florida State. The Seminoles took down the unfortunate UMass 59-3. So that was a 56 score line. That was a very large score line. Like I say, Florida State have been struggling, but in the last week or two, I believe that they have done really well. Jordan Travis has kind of kicked in, won that starting job. He's now proven to Mike Norvell that he could be the starter there. Like I say, unfortunately, this does confirm him in the end for Mackenzie Milton. But it was nice to get, I suppose, a soft rival 1 week to just get that game where you can kind of get things all going in the phase of the game. So that means quite a lot. The biggest upset of the week is the game we're about to talk to next. A rival record-setting 9 overtimes. Penn State, like I say, James Franklin's under a bit of pressure, and they fell to Illinois. Unfortunately, as we mentioned, lost their starting quarterback. And this was just quite an ugly game from both sides. They could not get it done. It just kept hanging on. Like I say, they couldn't get the run game going. Run defense, it was just a real struggle across the board. And when it got into overtime, you never felt like Penn State were going to get that job done. Like this just felt like the momentum was falling out of the hands. Even with every conversion that happened, you just felt like it was a matter of time before they slipped up. And then we'll go into the statement win of the week, which is the Ohio State Buckeyes. They took on the Indiana Hoosiers, which in previous years have given them all sorts of problems. But not this week. 54-7, CJ Stroud, Travion Henderson, like I say, Garrett, Chris Olave, the wide receivers, they are just firing on all cylinders now. They are putting in as good performances as Georgia. They're blowing teams away. This freshman pair are here to stay for a number of years now, and they're going to be giving people all sorts of trouble for many seasons to come, unfortunately. Like I say, Ryan Day is looking like he's on a good, comfortable run. The Buckeyes now are building momentum towards the end of the season, and it's looking like they're going to be in prime position when the playoff committee start to talk, because that was a large statement win, I think. That takes us back to the fixtures now. So we can next go to someone that we thought could potentially slip up or cause rival. Let's say Iowa State. The Cyclones this week have not had the best of years, like Breece Hall, Brock Purdy. It was expected that they could potentially mount a charge. Sorry about that.
That's all right. So just to say that this Oklahoma State game, Iowa State game, was the one that I don't know if you've seen on Twitter, but had a really big taunting call on it. I don't know whether you saw that, Ryan. It was laughable. I know that in the NCAAF, the rules on taunting are even more strict than in the NFL. So if you're not used to that, be prepared for it. But there was a game-tying score by Iowa State. It was a 40-yard run or something like that. Xavier Hutchinson on a slant route, 51-yard touchdown. And about a yard before the goal line, he was completely clear with no one around him. And he kind of did a sort of hog step sort of thing. The step was slightly longer than his normal steps. And then once he was in the end zone, he started doing a little bit of dancing. Drew the flag. They called unsportsmanlike conduct for taunting. But because he started taunting before the end zone, they chalked off the touchdown and gave him a 15-yard penalty from the 1-yard line. Like, if you were an NFL team fan, you would be going absolutely mad. Of course, Iowa go on to win the game, so it didn't hurt them. But my God, it's so glaring and so horrible watching it live.
Yeah, no. Sorry about this, everyone. Like say, I'm back now. No, I did see that call. Like say, on the field, they called that it said it was an excessive celebration before he got in the end zone, so they called it back. It just bothers me that players, like, I know he just kind of slowed down, did a little jockey thing with his legs, but just get the ball in the end zone. It's so frustrating. Just celebrate after. They'll put the 15 on the. They'll put the 15 points on the kickoff, so they'll punish you after that. But no, in the end, luckily, like I say, it didn't cost them, so it was very frustrating. Like I say, but in the end, they were able to get it done. So it shot James Franklin, like I say, will have been very disappointed in his performance altogether. We did expect. Oh, sorry, I'm talking out of the game. Sorry. It was at Oklahoma State. Like I say, Spencer, I think it's Spence, the quarterback. Like I say, they were okay. Sanders, yeah, they were okay on the day, but these decisions they didn't capitalize on. Like say, when a huge touchdown gets called back like that, you should be able to get momentum and breathe off it. But in the end, like say, Breece Hall, Iowa State have been able to lean on him this year when they haven't been able to lean on Brock Purdy. He's managed to move the chains, keep them going, and he's been probably the biggest part of most of the wins this year. So that was quite a big upset because we were hoping that there was going to be an undefeated Oklahoma and Oklahoma State in a few weeks. But unfortunately, Bedlam will not be undefeated this year. That was quite a big loss for them.
And Xavier Hutchinson, who had that chalked off, actually ended up with 12 receptions for 125 yards and 2 touchdowns. So having that 51-yarder chalked off didn't hurt him either. He kept going, which is, lesser players might really let that affect them or get carried away. He's actually looked really impressive in that game.
Yeah. He looks a good, strong, solid outside receiver that's very young. So it looks like he's potentially the future on the outside there, which I think is impressive to see because they needed a weapon. Brock Purdy kind of needs a friend because Charlie Kohler, the tight end, has been a bit hit and miss. So, like I say, he put it behind him. Like I say, he probably got a telling off on the sideline, but then managed to control the game for the best part, which was good to see.
I mean, I wonder if he could be a draft prospect for the Lions. He's a senior, 6'3", 210. Last year, 64 receptions, 771 yards and 4 touchdowns, average of 12 per catch. And this year, 46 for 539, same average, 5 touchdowns, so 1 more than in the whole of last year. he's probably going to be coming out as a senior unless he's got an extra year. He might have an extra year if he wants it, but 6'3", 210 outside receiver, could be one to look at.
It could be, like say, the same kind of measurables as someone's like Drake London. Like say, but you could probably get him a few rounds later. Like say, if the iron's hot now, I'd expect him to strike and probably declare for the draft early. He's probably someone that Lions fans could potentially keep an eye on. I'd say so. The next game to watch, this one was a big game. Like say, Oregon v UCLA. This had Pac-12. This had bragging rights in it, and this had potential Pac-12 championship going into it as well. These two were looking for a big division win, and the Oregon Ducks came out on top 34-31. Kayvon Thibodeau, like that, we just keep talking about the man, played limited snaps, but he was a menace. Like say, he racked up sacks, tackles for loss, generated pressures, even on limited snaps when he doesn't look 100%. The Troy Dye, like Oregon have lost CJ Vidal, their starting running back, but he had an odd stat line. He racked up touchdowns on very minimal touches. I think it was right. It was about 17 yards and was it 4 touchdowns? I think he had.
Yeah, he ended up with 14 carries, 35 yards and 4 touchdowns. But there was that famous picture where it was something like 17 yards and 4 touchdowns. His longest run was 6 yards.
Like say, he got all the plaudits. Like say, like he was just punching in scores in the end zone. Red zone defense for UCLA was a real. They just could not get anything going. Like say, they could just not stop Oregon. But like say, between Zach Charbonnet, who's having a fantastic year, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, that D line on the UCLA, they've got a strong defensive line. They were able to generate pressure. This game was end-to-end. It was back to forth. Like the quarterbacks had to rely on, like say, spread the workload around, and it was a really big win for Oregon. Who, for me, have had questions about them this year. We wondered how they do when they lost like Vidal. They don't have that star wide receiver. Kayvon's not always been healthy, but like say, cornerbacks like Mikael Wright have really stepped up this year. They're looking good, and it was a big win. And for on the Traverse, that was a really massive loss for UCLA, who have now lost to Oregon, Arizona State. Like if you're going to lose games in a year, you can't lose them to Pac-12 rivals, because that's what hurts you in the conference standings, no matter how many out of division games you win. So that kept them in the rankings. They're sitting nicely in the top 10 now, Oregon. They're probably going to be there all year. And there's good talks of probably a Pac-12 title game coming, I think, because they're leading that North.
I know that last week you mentioned this as a potential, well, Ant wanted to say upset, and it wasn't an upset call because UCLA were actually favourites in this one. So for Oregon to pull out the victory, even though they're the ranked team, it's a big one for them. And if you have a look at the stats, Oregon dominated them in terms of yards, but UCLA were terrifically efficient when it got down to actually scoring points. So, sometimes it isn't the number of yards you have, but Oregon had a guy get 2 interceptions. James, can't remember his first name. It's just DJ James, sophomore corner. So very solid from him. Oregon is a team that you like to see do well, especially considering they have the best jerseys in the league. And I'm not backing down from that. I know you got a bit on jerseys later, but Thibodeau shoring up that number 1 ranking at the moment. At the end of the day, you guys have been saying, there's no bona fide number 1 out there, really, or at least in terms of quarterbacks, there definitely isn't. But in general, kind of no one's quite separated themselves yet. But it looks like he's kind of starting to a little bit more and more. Draft analysts are saying, well, he's just going to be number 1.
It does, yeah, because you have to look at like his body of work against how much time he's played. And he has knocks this year. He has looked not always 100%, but he's still producing the pressures. I saw a lovely swim move. He flew around the edge against UCLA. Like he just rode under the arm, took him round. Like he's a pure technician. Like I say, he's locking on that number 1 spot. Could very well be the next Jadeveon Clowney. Like he's you don't often see an outside linebacker defensive end go number 1, but when you do, it's for a reason. Like I say, right now, there's no one really that can knock him out of that perch.
No, and I mean PFF their tailgate podcast, which I'm a big fan of, and we had one of the contributors on our show early last year, formerly the 2 for 1 Drafts podcast. They were saying, that he potentially is comparable to Myles Garrett coming out now. That's the sort of level he's reached. And, they think that potentially he's a better prospect than Chase Young, who I know the Lions fans fell in love with last year and couldn't quite get. So for anyone who wants to trade out of one, if that's where we end up, don't hurry, Take your time and have a look at this guy, I think.
No, I agree. It's a scary comparison for such a young man, Myles Garrett, who started fairly slowly in the league, I thought, but now has come up now. Like saying he's racked up those years of experience. But like say, Kayvon is able to explosively start day one. Like say, even if number one is becoming more and more valuable, which I didn't think it was to start with, maybe we do sit whoever lands there. Maybe they're not going to take the bait of a trade.
There was a question that came in just before we move on. Dan asked, who are your top 5 quarterbacks at the moment? I don't know if you've got that solidified in your mind quickly, but I just thought I should ask you now because it was a little while ago he wanted to know that.
Yeah, I don't have them in any order right now, but it's Matt Corral, it's Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell, Kenny Pickett. They're probably my 5 guys, and then I'll put Carson Strong in that tier, like 6. That's the top 5 guys in the order for me.
I mean, I'm looking through the predictive draft board from the Draft Network, and you've listed off their top 6, and then there's a sizable gap between them and the rest of the field now. So the guys underneath that are made up of Tanner McKee, Spencer Rattler, Jake Hayner, JT Daniels, Phil Jerkovich, Caden Slovis, Jack Cohen, Jaden Daniels. These are all guys who are talented people who could maybe do a job at the next level, but likely probably not. Maybe Spencer Rattler can if he can get his head out of his ass, but he's probably not declaring. So, you listed it in their order apart from swapping Strong and Pickett, which I thought was impressive straight off the bat. So hopefully that answers your question, Dan. But let's move on to your college love of Wake Forest.
They're slowly becoming not my love. Like, I saw people were hyping up this game, but for all the wrong reasons. Like, Wake Forest played a barnstormer, like say 70-56, like say against an Army team that run the triple option. So they had about 300-400 yards rushing. They had about 10 different guys rush the ball. The stats were pretty ridiculous. Controlling time of possession, that's what military services football like to do. But I'm getting more and more increasingly concerned that Wake Forest just don't have a defense. You cannot be asking, like, Sam Hartman is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the nation right now. He's by no means finished. He's up there in all the categories as one of the greatest Demon Deacons quarterbacks of all time. And they just keep asking him to win games every week. And he just keeps obliging. Like I say, they're still on this quest to try and make an ACC title game. But when you look at the remaining schedule, this does not fill you with confidence on their defense, because they're not going to be able to score this level of teams against so many of those coming up rivals. But full credit to Army. They just would not go away. They had passing touchdowns. They never throw the ball. Like I say, they were able to grind down that defense so heavily, mix the odd pass in there. And unfortunately, in the end, they kind of fell out of time. Like I said, because they run the ball so heavily, they use the clock so much that they don't leave themselves enough time for a comeback. And it was late in the game where, like say, it was level, like at 56-56, and I thought the comeback's on. But Army, I think, turned over on downs, and that was kind of it then. They were never able to get the ball back. But they stay undefeated, Wake Forest, but they're not convincing me just yet, even though how much I love them.
I mean, it's an incredible stat line. I know what you're saying about Army and the fact they run the triple option, but it's a mental stat line. 70 rushes for Army versus 13 passing attempts. You could not be more stark than that. And their quarterback threw 9 completions and 3 touchdowns. Like, how did this happen? It's so crazy. But Sam Hartman, did you say? Yeah. 458 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, quarterback rating 98. Like, what can he do as a quarterback? That's a perfect game.
Yeah, not more. Like I said, the only thing with his quarterback rating was because I think he had so many attempts. Like I say, the completion percentage was only minimal, but you look on his year, look at the season, like it's phenomenal. Like I say, he protects the ball so well. You will very, very rarely get an interception from this man because he's just very accurate, which I do love. And like I say, I don't think he won't be in this year's draft, but he's certainly a name to watch in like 2 years' time. He's not the biggest, 5'11", 6 foot, like I say, not got the big build, but you don't have to in these days. Like he's built like Russell Wilson, like I say, he's pinpoint accuracy, going down as a legend, and it was by far the most entertaining games all season, even if no defense was played.
I mean, you can see that year on year he's getting better, his rating's increasing, his completion rate's increasing. They have him listed at 6'1", 208, but you know what it's like with measurables in college, they're always inflating it a little bit. He's only a sophomore, so he's not even eligible this year, but I mean, if he continues on this rise, and you know, he completed 58% of his passes last year, that's not going to cut it. 65% this year. If he can hang around that sort of 70% level next year, reduce the interceptions even more, the turnover-worthy plays, and still have that sort of electric offense, he could be one of the top quarterbacks coming out next year. I mean, despite his height, it could be, I mean, not like a Kyler Murray, but just in terms of his height, you know, like, and that sort of passing acumen, it's really something. So, one to watch next year, Wake Forest again.
No, I agree. Like say, stature doesn't always mean production. He's one of those smaller guys just getting it done. That takes us on to the next game, like say, which was a very, like say, it's one I've mentioned already. It is NC State. They were the 18th seed, unfortunately. They got hit by the curse. And I'd just like to applaud the Miami Hurricanes. Everything's gone wrong this year. Like I say, they're down to their freshman quarterback, Trevor Van Dyke. He had a phenomenal game, and they took them down 31-30. I did not see this coming whatsoever. I didn't see another win this year for Miami at all. They've lost Derek King, they've lost Bolden. Manny, their head coach, is all going wrong. They've recently missed a game by missing a field goal at the end, but full credit to them. They dug in there. They took on one of the hardest to beat teams in the ACC, and they got it done. They could potentially have a gem in Trevor Van Dyke. Like I say, he's a big-bodied pocket passer. As a freshman, runs a totally different offense to what Derek King did. Still got Will Mallory, that star tight end that can be his best friend. And I really hope they finish out the season strong, just for the Hurricanes fans and for the quarterback, for his confidence too. Like I say, because it was a pretty big upset. NC State opened as very healthy favourites.
Yeah, so Van Dyke, two-sport player, also was a pitcher in baseball. We all know that they seem to translate very well to the NFL. 6'4", 212, 4-star recruit. So this is no slouch, this guy. And what a performance from somewhere that I'd like to think is twinned with one of my hometowns, Glastonbury, Connecticut. So, yeah, really impressive. And to pull out this victory against a team that, you know, this year has been far better is a big performance. You know, 25 completions on 33 attempts, 325 yards, 4 touchdowns. What more can you do? NC State almost, you know, didn't stand a chance against that level of performance.
No, like I say, they didn't do all that much wrong. Like I say, it's just one of them times, like I say, where sometimes the stars just align on that final drive where you use up enough of the clock. Or like I say, you're able to just squeak over the line, stop a comeback, like I say, and it was just a really nice platform. Like I say, all this is building up for them for next year. Because Van Dyke will be the guy, whether Derek King's there or not. I think you kind of have to go with this kid now. Big 4-star recruit. I'd say pitchers, baseball, make great quarterbacks because they've got the arm motion. They can rip it out. Like say, all the best usually played baseball in life. So maybe Trevor Van Dyke is going to be a name to watch in the next few years. And they also, like I say, they looked good in all black. It was a nice black uniform too.
Is that going to be a mention later on?
It's not, no, surprisingly.
Oh, shocker.
Next game, like I say, Clemson's poor season. It just continues. Like I say, they stopped, and someone came into town, and Mr. Kenny Pickett, like I say, and his unbeaten Pitt Panthers. Like, he's a name that is shooting up people's draft boards, but if anyone asks, I'm going to halt that progress later on because there's some things about him, but no, they had no match. DJU or DJ Ungalele, just no offense. Like I say, I don't know what's wrong with Clemson. Like I say, Will Shipley's back but not healthy. They've still got Justin Ross. I don't know if it's the play calling. I don't know what's happening, but Clemson just cannot find any offense in any week of this season. Like I say, a mere 17 points, and for them, that is becoming pretty consistent now. It's worrying. I worry, is Dabo Swinney losing his touch? Is his job under tenure? Like I say, it's a hard one.
Yeah, I think given last year and the previous years to that, they're probably going to give him a year's grace. But if this continues into next season, he's going to be in trouble. I mean, I don't know whether you saw the shovel pass that Ungalele had, but that was one of the most horrific things I've ever seen a quarterback do. And I've seen the butt fumble many times, but this was somehow beautifully worse. And they actually ended up benching him after that play. So if you haven't seen it, he shovel passes straight into a defender's hands for an interception. Like, the guy is right in front of the guy meant to be shovel passed to, just gives it straight to him. He's basically not even looking at the guy, or he's looking at him, but he hasn't seen him. And taken back to the house for a pick six. And they actually end up putting in their sophomore backup, Taysom Fomachanch. I don't know how to say that. But
I don't know how to say it either.
And he wasn't any better. So, it's worrying times for Clemson. Their only redeeming feature is Justin Ross, who seems to remain healthy for the moment, but he isn't enough to get that offense going.
No, like I say, he'll be gone soon. The next guy up is, I think it's Daniel Nagata, but he's just a freshman receiver. He's not much help to a quarterback that needs a bit of help on the outside. Like I say, defense, Spectre, Skolsky, and like I say, those good linebackers. Like, the defense right now is keeping them in games, but Pitt just picked them off. Like Kenny Pickett now, 6th-year quarterback, super experienced. Like I say, he knows how to take down a Clemson team. He knows when to pick his shots. He protects the ball nicely, and they just run a well-driven team. And they look like someone that is going to be a player in the conference come end of the year, because right now, Pitt just don't look like slowing down anytime soon. And neither does Pickett's stock, which is just slowly climbing, even if he's got the hands of a 6-year-old boy, because he's got some of the smallest hands I've ever seen on a quarterback.
Oh, yeah. If you think that Jared Goff has small hands at 9 inches, I think his are meant to be 8 1/4. And a very fair point was made recently to me, saying basically, you heard just after the draft process, Jamar Chase come out and basically say, the ball is significantly different and I'm having trouble with it as a receiver. And I mean, he can use 2 hands and catch the ball. But the NFL ball is significantly bigger than the NCAA ball. So, I don't think hand size beyond a certain level makes a massive difference. If you've got 9.5-inch hands or 9.25-inch hands and bigger, fine. But at that sort of 8.25-inch level, it could be a potential issue.
It could, yeah, just in gripping the laces, because this is a man for the past 5 years has nearly always worn 2 gloves. Now that tells me he likes extra grip, and that's kind of worrying to see. Like, you don't ever see him play without the gloves on. I question what his touch is like, what his feel for the laces is like, and I don't like to be ageist, but this is going to sound bad. He's 23 already. He will be 24 by time just after the draft. If he's sitting for a year, he'll be 25. A 25-year-old rookie quarterback that's 3 years older than probably everyone else in the class. Like, he's already behind and lost that time to learn. Like, it kind of sets him up for either a shocks wonder story or a bust. Someone's going to reach for this guy, but I sincerely hope it's not the Lions, because time's already against him. And we're talking about that before he's even got to the league, because you have such a short lifespan as a quarterback. He will already be nearly 25 by the time someone gives him the keys to the car. And it's not fair to use it against him, but everyone will use it against him, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, Penn Sewell entered the league as the youngest player at 21 years old. By the time he finishes his 4-year deal, there's a 5th-year option, but it's a 4-year deal until it's a 5th-year option. Kenny Pickett will be the same age as him at the end of that deal, but he's finished his rookie contract. Like, it's not it's not the only way that I think you could consider having a quarterback like him come is if he has a season for the ages and is the obvious number one pick. Then you can kind of overlook that and say this guy starts day one. Don't worry about sitting in the year and having him bed in. He's having a significantly better year than any year he's had before. He's had 13 touchdowns and 9 interceptions in the last 2 years, which for a college quarterback is middling to bad. Like, that's not good figures. I don't, stats don't always tell the true story, but 13 touchdowns to 9 interceptions is not enough touchdowns and too many interceptions in consecutive years. And now suddenly he's 23-1. His average yards per target's gone up, his completion percentage has gone up. But how much of this is a one-year bounce? You spend a first-round pick on him, you're kind of stuck with him, but you don't want to be. Like, I can't see him going first round in any circumstance at the moment.
No, like I say, it would be a big. Like I say, he's a flyer. He's a project. Like I say, if you can get him in the middle to late rounds, someone's going to happily go that. And I use the age concept as well. Look at Kenny Golladay. When we drafted him, he was like 23, 24 already. He's now, only 3 years in. He's had significant injuries, and he's already 27. People were saying you can't pay that man because he's too old. Like, he was already too old, like, say, when he came. And, like, age isn't just a number. It does actually interfere what people think here, like, say. And it could just be a one-year wonder.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, do you really want to give a 5-year deal to someone who could be 32 at the end of it, 33 at the end of it? If you have to look at someone like Des Bryant, who fell off the edge of a cliff at age 30, whatever it was, you don't want to be giving the big bucks to someone of that age. And while, quarterbacks can last significantly longer than that, the quarterbacks that do tend to be terrific pocket passes. And yes, that is Pickett's game. So maybe it's not such a massive factor. And maybe we should be considering him a little bit more because it's not like he's going to get old and lose his legs. Like he's an arm guy. And that's fine. But it's too risky for me. Too risky at this stage of the rebuild.
I'm waiting, like, say, in a year or two. Hopefully he's going to prove me wrong. He'll be leading some team. He'll start halfway through his rookie year and carry on. But right now, I just don't see it, unfortunately.
No. Oh, poor Clemson.
I know. I don't know where they go from here now. Like you say, I think offensive coordinator must go. Defensive coordinator, they haven't been bad on the defense for most of the games, but the offense needs shaking up completely. Like I say, I won't be surprised if all the assistants leave.
Ashley in the chat just said it's bold of you to say that age matters considering your birthday was yesterday. Did you have a good day, by the way?
I did, yeah. It was, like I say, it was a cozy day. Went on outside the huddle, did a pod last night, like I say. Had work through the day. Off to see a band tomorrow, like I say. That's what happens in middle age. Like, life slows down a little bit, like I say. And I'm 28, like I say, and I've probably got as much, like I say, potential as anyone playing NFL, like I say, and I'm only a few years older than Kenny Pickett. So he's too old.
You seeing anyone big tomorrow? Or is it just a local band? Or
big, yeah. Don Broco, like I say, I'm going to Manchester to see them, so that'll be a good tour.
Cool.
And if anyone here knows how to pronounce the Clemson backup quarterback's name, please let us know in the chat. Give us, because I've tried to pronounce it many times and I can't even do it because there's too many letters.
There are. Well, let's give this another go. Tyson Pomachank. That's what I'm going with. Chan. Fomachan. The H at the end is silent, isn't it? Fomachan. That's all right. I'll take that. If you can do better, let us know.
I've got a feeling we're going to be calling that name before the season's up because DJ will get benched very soon, especially when there's nothing less to play for, I feel.
Even now, I mean, he's only in his first year. Can you really do that to him? I mean, we've been talking about Goff here and, the fact that, is benching him an idea and, it might bring life to this offense. But Herman Moore on the Lions Nation Unite app, of which we are now a part, if you've missed that announcement, the official announcement to come out later, but we did put that on the last podcast. Herman was saying, you bench the guy, you're telling him that, for me, you're giving up on him. It's not just about sending a statement. It's saying you're so bad that even if you're the best thing here right now, I can't be seen to endorse you. And the trust is broken at that point. And for DJ, he's only a sophomore. He came in and had a okay year last year in relief of Trevor Lawrence when he was injured. 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, 67% completion rate. This year he's fallen off a cliff a bit, but he's still a really young guy. Would you really bench him?
And I kind of want to see what the young man below him's got. I think maybe in college it's different. Maybe not. It's not as trashing on him as much, like I say, because there's less at stake. I think Dabo needs to really put an arm around him. It doesn't help, like you say, that he's got no run game. Clemson, it's where Clemson took one of the best 5-star running back recruits for years in Will Shipley. Everyone wanted him, but they've just not been able to replicate Travis Etienne. Maybe they will next year, like I say, when he's bedded in a year, like I say, but you take a 5-star running back, you like him to hit the ground running and help a quarterback. Unfortunately, that just didn't happen this year.
All right, next up, Wisconsin at Purdue.
I like to say this was a sneaky good game. Like I say, Wisconsin, an okay side. They moved the ball pretty well, solid run game. Like I say, Purdue, we know, like I say, they've got David Bell, a dynamic weapon. They just come, like I say, off of a lashing of Iowa, took down one of the biggest upsets of the season. This had bragging rights too as well. Like I say, both big teams. So it was one of them things. Like I think it was quite a hit and miss game at times. I think it was something that was I didn't expect it to go this one-sided, and eventually, like I say, Wisconsin kind of run away with this one. Like I say, ended 30-13. Like it was odd because the Purdue that was against Iowa just didn't turn up. Like we kind of thought they would, like they'd back and follow it up with this, but that wasn't the case at all. Like they struggled to get the ball moving. Like there wasn't much going on. Like I say, can't always rely on David Bell. But Wisconsin have a wicked ground game. Like they've become one of those running back just teams that you look for them to produce a guy to the draft kind of every other year. They just keep producing them. They've got an experienced defensive line of Wisconsin. They do build themselves on these big guys, create holes, and that takes pressure off of a quarterback that I've always said absolutely sucks. I think is it Graham Wirtz?
Yeah.
Yeah, that dude sucks. He has been bad.
I mean, his own coach knows he sucks as well because he only threw 8 attempts in this game, completing 5 for 52 yards, but they ran it 51 times. You know, bit of a disparity there. And like you said, rushing kings, Ches Malusi, 27 attempts, 149 yards and a touchdown long of 35, and backed up nicely by Braylon Allen, 12 attempts for 140 yards and 2 touchdowns and a long of 70. So Purdue could not stop the rush. If you wanted a tale of a tape of this game, Purdue rushed 24 times to Wisconsin's 51. Purdue rushed for minus 13 yards in the game versus Wisconsin's 290. You know, if you can't stop the run and you can't run yourself, you're behind the 8 ball already. You know, it's just something that's really hard to face. So.
That was it's impressive. It's impressive when you can finish with minus 13 when you pound the rock 24 times. Like that is a stat in itself. It's not something to be proud of, but like I say, if you can control the clock, if you can run the ball, the other team can't. One team is never going to be on the field. Purdue's time of possession was terrible. Like I say, just Wisconsin just never gave them any breathing room. Smashed the ball down their throat, and that is the sign of a good team. Like I say, Wisconsin can't rely on their passing game right now. It's kind of just non-existent. But when you've got interchangeable running backs, or 1 and 2, that can both get you 100, 120 yards, like you will be in every game because defense is tired. If you can stop running in the first half, don't mean you can stop running in the second half. And in the end, they cruise to victory. Like I say, and Purdue just proved themselves that they're pretenders. They saw the big upset, back down to earth with a bump.
I'm pretty new to the college game, so I hope that this is accurate. But if you're new to college too, hopefully this explains things. The reason that a team so comprehensively can get a negative rushing yards score in the college game is because quarterback sacks are counted against the rushing score in college, but they're counted against the passing score in the NFL. And it's considered that against the passing score is a fair thing because quarterbacks often, when they're being sacked, are trying to throw the ball. Whereas, if they're probably not getting sacked trying to rush the ball because they more often than not be at the line of scrimmage by the time they get there. So that's just a little wrinkle of the game. The reason that they're minus 13 yards is Aiden McConnell, the quarterback, had 4 rushes for minus 35 yards. Clearly just sacks. So
yeah, it's not really fair. Like in college, a quarterback that gets sacked is not a ball carrier, but they call him a ball carrier. Like it's kind of weird that way. Like I say, and that Wisconsin defense had a day, chased him down for nearly 40 yards. Like they're not just sacks, they're big sacks, they're drive killers. Like I say, that fantastic day, good pass rush, linebackers look good. So fantastic performance from Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm. All right, next up, Syracuse at Virginia Tech.
This was a high-scoring game. Syracuse took this one 41-36 in a shootout, which was very end-to-end. Garrett Schrader, their quarterback, we've seen him in the past few weeks. He is a running dynamo. Like, he carries the ball as well as most running backs. I think he's someone that is very elusive and hard to stop. Virginia Tech, they're a hard team to judge. They look very different week to week. Like, they can look good one week, other weeks they don't look good. I believe it's Hendon Hooker, the starting quarterback there. I could be wrong.
For VT?
Yeah.
Braxton Burmeister.
Oh, no, yeah, that's City of Virginia. Braxton Burmeister, he's had a very interesting year. Like, he's got a big arm, but he does turn the ball over. Like I say, he's thrown for a shed load of yards. Like I say, he had one of those games where I think it was just trying to play catch up all the time. They were just slinging it. Like I say, he's someone that relies on the arm, which does get him into trouble. Like I say, he is able. Syracuse have a good defense. They've got one of the top corners in the nation. I always forget his last name. It's Garrett something. No, wears lots of armbands. I think
it's a very heavy.
Yeah, they've got a star cornerback. His name always eludes me.
Garrett Canton Arku? No, that's Jeff. Beg your pardon. I was looking for G's on here, and that's the first one I came to. He hasn't come up on the box score for me, so.
I say that then he didn't show up, but no. Syracuse, like I say, produced a lot of NFL defensive backs. They're a good, strong unit. They will play often. When I've watched them, they'll play 6 DBs. They will put both nickels as well as, like I said, off safeties, corners. They will challenge you to throw on them. And I think in the end, Virginia Tech probably didn't protect the ball well enough. Like I say, it was just a bit of a messy game up and down. Syracuse, they're a good team. They just don't always turn like they rely very heavily on the quarterback there. They've got one of the best running backs in the nation. I believe Sean Tucker now leads the whole nation in rushing yards. He's the first running back in the league to pass 1,000 rushing yards. He is very sneaky.
So Garrett Williams, freshman DB, he didn't play in the game. I'm not sure if he's injured, but his last game was the loss against Clemson 11 days ago. So presumably he's out with a knock. But yeah, they are DBU, aren't they? Syracuse, really. They have so many good DBs. You could see it last year with the number that came out. And I mean, Virginia Tech, their stats are not overwhelming by any means. They were outscored in terms of passing and rushing yards, but they were only 5 points back against this quality of defense. So you could say it was a good performance by Virginia, especially considering they've lost 4 of their last 5 now.
Yeah, they're on quite the skid. Like I say, Braxton, like I say, up and down. I suppose the stats and the figures were there. The red zone wasn't. Like I say, settling for field goals. We know that doesn't win. We know it doesn't win you games. There just weren't enough touchdowns there. Like I say, and Syracuse aren't always the highest scoring. So, like I say, that was a big ACC clash. Those are 2 of the middle of the road teams. So that was bragging rights for the New Yorkers. And that's where Syracuse is.
I'll take your word for that because I haven't got a clue. Syracuse location. It says New York State, so yeah, Syracuse, New York. It's the county seat of Onondaga County. So there we go. Finishing up with the notable, as Ant called it, notable games with Nevada at Fresno State.
Yeah, this is the game of, as I said the other day, it's two quarterbacks and it's two wide receivers. On Nevada's side of the ball, you've got Romeo Dubes and you've got Carson Strong. And on the other side, you have Jalen Cropper and Jake Hayner, two of the nation's most accurate, highest completion percentage quarterbacks, absolute gunslingers. These two have got about 5,000 passing yards between them already. And this turn, it lived up to what it was. Let's say they sneaked out a close 34-32 win, did Fresno State. It was an impressive win for the Bulldogs, but Carson Strong didn't put a foot wrong. Like I say, you can't do much more and lose the game. Like I say, he didn't do his draft stock any harm. Nevada just fell short. Like I say, a tie would have been fair in this, but Fresno State have, let's say, the defending, I think, Mountain West Conference Championship game from last year. Like they're a really good side. Like they're good on both sides of the ball. They've had Boise State's numbers in the last few years. They're one of the kings of the mountains, as we like to say. They're having a fantastic year. And Jake Hayner, his name is rearing his name on quarterback rankings. People are starting to open their eyes about these two. And they're probably both in the top 10, 11 guys maybe next year. It was a great offensive game to watch.
Yeah, it really looks like it. I mean, Romeo Dubes, 19 catches in a game. Like, I know that Carson Strong had 49 completions on 61 attempts, which is insane in itself, but to lock into one receiver so heavily, I know you said it's one quarterback, one receiver, but just that much, 19 receptions for 203 yards and a touchdown is ridiculous. And, Jake Hayner is really starting to make people sit up and take notice. Best season of his career so far, highest completion percentage, best touchdown to interception ratio, longest yards on a touchdown in a season so far. You know, everything statistically is going his way. He's won 4 of the last 5. It's been a really good one, including beating UCLA at the start of that 5-game run, who are a ranked team at the time. So can't ask for much more than that.
No, I'd say despite the loss, I'd say both teams are trending in the right direction. Like say Nevada, I don't know what they're going to do, who's up next, let's say, because these two quarterbacks will be leaving. These two teams could look very different next year, but they're making the most of them while they have them. Hopefully, like say, Fresno State can return to the championship, also make a big bowl game. Nevada have got high-powered offense. I'd just like to see them concede a little less. Like say, defense could do with pulling its weight a little bit better. Like say, ship too many yards, but no, I think even though it was one took the loss, like 2 guys to watch out for, and a really fun game to watch, like I say. And it's amazing, 19 receptions. When you know what a team wants to do when they challenge you to stop it, they still couldn't cover him. The corners, safeties, they just had a bad day. He cooked them. Like I said, that was 5. So there were 5 ranked teams that lost in those scores. Those were the majority. Like I say, every week now, I've been kind of like looking at like teams that there's a rule in football. If you're going to look good, you have to play good. That's not always the case. So I like to look at the fresh threads, what everyone's wearing. So I picked my favorite uniforms of the week and one I dislike. Now, you mentioned Oregon earlier. They wore those fancy split Oreo uniforms with the green numbers, black helmet, and the speckled stuff. They're my number 2. Like I say, I don't have them top. Top is the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Now, people go look at this. It's an anthracite, like dark grey with white and gold numbers and a chromy gold bronze helmet. And it looked beautiful. Like I say, and they looked good as well. Minnesota routed Maryland. Tolia Tagovailoa. The wheels are falling off at Maryland, but Minnesota looked good. And they looked good doing it too. Like they're my favourite uniform of this week. I'd like to give an honourable mention to Penn State. They wore some traditional greatness throwback uniforms, but they painted some nice throwback diamonds in their end zone. They painted their pitch as a special anniversary design, which looked quite nice in their team colours. So that was a nice touch. And the dislike of the week goes to OU, Oklahoma. I just don't like these Jumpman uniforms. North Carolina looked really good, but Oklahoma had these like red and white washed out uniforms, like wood paneling on the sleeves. It looked nasty. I just don't like it. I'd say. So unfortunately, they get the wooden spoon this week, but it was a close run. I'd say. So we will now look at the upcoming games, and well, we know where we're going to start this week, don't we?
Only one place.
Probably the biggest matchup, I think, maybe in the entire history of the rivalry. It's definitely the highest ranked game they've ever played, and that is going to, I think, East Lansing. It's Michigan Wolverines, Michigan State, both unbeaten. Blake Corum v Kenneth Walker, Cade McNamara v Peter Thorne. Like, this is going to be a game for the ages, and it's been made on prime time.
It's a massive game. It's a huge game. It's the first time since 1964 that they've met each other as unbeaten top 10 ranked teams. And it's the first time in their history that they've met at 7-0 or better each. I mean, this is historic, this game. And whoever wins catapults themselves into playoff contention. You know, Michigan at the moment is, I think, number 4 in most people's projections of who might get into that 14 playoff, and Michigan State are hanging around at where they are ranked about now. Either side wins, and it puts them right up there. There are still some hard games on the rest of their schedules, but this is the big one to get over. Michigan State have won 7 of the last 11, I think. So it's not going to be a cakewalk for Michigan.
No, it's not. Like I say, this is the game that's probably had the most online when I said they've ever met. Like I say, it's not just Michigan avenging that awful botch snap Michigan State taking to the house. That was bad. But like I say, there is playoff intentions online. If you'd have said at the start of the year that Mel Tucker would have Michigan State unbeaten going into this game, you'd have got laughed out whatever bar you're in. People would have told you were crazy. But Kenneth Walker isn't having a Heisman year. Right? Bijan Robinson, I've seen, like, he's one of the only running backs in the Heisman, like, updated odds. Like, he's up there. But Kenneth Walker really deserves to be there. Like, the amount of touches he's getting, the workload he's getting, like, he's putting a few 200-yard games already. He looks phenomenal. And I like Michigan State because they've got a better passing offense. Like, Peter Thorne looks like he's more productive than Cade McNamara. He's got Speedy Noyle, like say, who speedy by name, speedy by nature. He is a lightning receiver. Last week had, I think, three touchdowns. Like, he is someone that is, once you run the ball, they can open up the passing game. Michigan is going to have a hell of a job stopping that deep on the defense. But like, see, you look on the other side of the ball, Blake Corum, like, he's keeping up stride for stride pretty well. Like I say, he's not slowing down. I have questions about the passing game. If one of the other teams stops the run, who is going to be able to air it out and win the game? This one, hopefully, is going to be a shootout. I'd say whoever wins is putting themselves in conference play, title game in their own. Potential, like say, sneaks into that number 4 at the end of the year. Like, it's going to be fun, like I say, and it's going to be impossible to call right now too.
Yeah, there's just so much on the line. You keep seeing things on Twitter about Michigan fans trying to buy up a load of state tickets as, you know, fans sell them on, and you do wonder how many blue fans there are going to be in that stadium. It's going to be interesting to see. But just on the Michigan side of the ball, I think the best thing that can happen for them, because I don't think they're going to do it willingly themselves, is for Cade McNamara to go down with an injury, because he is not the answer. That guy is not the passer of the future. They have a 5-star recruit, freshman quarterback, who, when he's come in, has done really well. He's only thrown 19 attempts, thrown 2 touchdowns and no interceptions, had a willingness to throw the ball deep. He's got it, and Cade doesn't. So the sooner they make that change, the better for this team. It raises their ceiling. You know, maybe the floor is high with Cade, and maybe that's what they care about at 7-0. But you know what? If you're in Michigan's position at the moment, especially considering how it's been the last couple of years, you've got to chase the ceiling. You've got to say, we can win the playoffs, and that's going to happen more likely with JJ. So if you're a Blue fan, that's what I'd be rooting for going into this game, is that JJ starts, and if not, that Cade gets injured. And I don't want to root for anyone to get injured. Not really injured, you know, benched early after 2 bad throws or something. But my God, like you say, Ryan, the passing game ain't there with Michigan, and so MSU's floor is just higher because they can hit you both ways.
like I say, I don't know if you're Jim Harbaugh. I don't think it's scared, but the way he'll look at it is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But like I say, sometimes you've got to go for broke. Like I say, McCarthy's this young, hungry gunslinger. Does give him the best option to be a dual threat offense. Right now, they do look one-dimensional. If someone shuts down the entire run game now and Cade stays under center for a whole game, are they going to be able to get over the line? Like I say, I don't think so. And I think this season really does, even though like the extension, Jim Harbaugh is coming under so much fire lately. Like his job always seems to be on the hot seat because Michigan's such a big side, very opinionated fan base. Like if he were to lose, there'd be people calling for his head. If it doesn't go well, like I say, I think people will be very frustrated. Like I say, so maybe go for broke, like I say, start JJ, see what happens. Like I say, this one could produce anywhere between 60 and 100 points if it goes as planned.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much on the line here because, like I say, it's the first time in the history of the matchup that they faced each other as 7-0 or better. But in the college football playoff era, Michigan has never made the playoffs, but MSU have once. If MSU can get a second one on the board, they got the bragging rights for years to come. So, massive implications
here. Yeah, like I say, it's going to be prime time. I would love Michigan State to win, just to silence the fans of Michigan, like I say, because timelines on Twitter, it'll go crazy. Like I say, it's going to be a very partisan crowd. Michigan State is going to be loud. They better get ready to do some snap calls or something in the line because you won't be able to hear anything in that stadium. Like I say, it's going to be fantastic, especially in the student section. It's one of the games that year where you want to be. It doesn't surprise me that they're trying to snap up tickets so state fans can't get there.
I mean, just for the sake of impartiality as a Detroit Lions podcast, I'm going to do what I did on Monday and say go Cyan. Go Cyan as a mix between green and blue. Gosh, I'm a real sit on the fence guy for this because I don't know who just fought out these two. I really don't. I have nothing on the line personally, and it's just great to see two teams from the state of Michigan do so well. So,
I'd say, yeah, if you're from Michigan, this is a year to just put rivalries aside before and after this week and just revel in having two good football teams because, like I say, Mel Tucker might not be around much longer as well. So Michigan State fans, make the most of him while you got him because his name right now, like I say, LSU, USC, he is hot. He is hot commodity right now. So, like I say, he'll want one for the fans. Like I say, that is definitely a game to watch this weekend. But there's a later game in the weekend if we look at Auburn and Ole Miss. Auburn open up at that cursed 18 spot in the AP poll. Like I say, 6 weeks, that's been unlucky. We got this Ole Miss. Like I say, it's another big game for, like I say, Matt Corral, Lane Kiffin. Like I say, the up and down Bo Nix is what I'll say because I can be critical of him, but he's inconsistent. But Tanks Bigsby, like I say, one of the nation's best teams. Tavius, like I say, I love that name. Like he carries that offense. He's a brute. This one should be a barnstormer too. Like there's going to be a lot of points scored here. This is one of the later games on the evening. I think it's about midnight Sunday. But this is a very big test of Ole Miss's credentials. And Auburn will be looking to cause an upset.
And they could well do too. I mean, they're favoured in the matchup predictor per ESPN 60-40. So even though, you got Matt Corral balling out, leading in passing, leading in rushing, 9 rushing touchdowns and 15 passing touchdowns on the year. But Bo Nix and the Auburn team are big favourites at home. So it's going to be a really good one to watch. Both teams strong on offense, not so good on defense. So,
like I say, in the last few weeks, it's Matt Corral's had to do the damage of his legs. Like I say, he's had games where he's rushed for like 300 plus yards in the last few weeks. He's had teams have taken away the pass. They've made him get out of the pocket, and he's probably done his draft stock the world good because I didn't know he could rush just that well. But he is one tough little dude, and he's going to need it. Like I say, so this is going to be a duel between two good quarterbacks, like I say, with strong arms. So this one should have fireworks in it. Let's see, got other games.
Georgia at Florida. Big big game considering that Florida have, put up a fight in the last few.
They have, yeah. Like you say, Florida in the last few weeks they've racked up some points. Like I say, they've got a pretty high-powered offense. Like I said, they've hung in teams with there. They can put 30, 40 points on a team, but they're coming up against one of the greatest defenses I've ever seen. I think I read a stat like last week that the last 5 national championship winners were averaging like 16.8 points per game against. Right now, Georgia are like 7. They are playing elite football on defense, and they're giving Stetson Bennett, if he gets the call, or JT Daniels, just such a good platform to work off. Get great field position. They're the most complete team in the nation. Like, I can't see who's going to stop them right now, but Florida will give them issues. Like, they will challenge them. Like, this won't be any cakewalk. I hope Georgia doesn't take them too lightly and look ahead to the future. But no, like, if you overlook Florida, if you look past them, they might just have a sting in the tail. But we expect a Georgia win. But this could be high scoring too, yeah.
I mean, it's interesting because Florida haven't committed to a starting quarterback for this game yet. So they started off with Emory Jones in the loss against LSU. But Anthony Richardson, the freshman, came on in the second half and led 4 straight touchdown drives. So, that can't help in terms of morale unless the new guy comes in, right? So if it's the old heads coming in who didn't have that level of success, maybe a change is in, and it's going to be possibly the young guy. So
I've seen people in the last few weeks calling Anthony Richardson maybe the new Cam Newton of his play style. They like him to like that. He's a freshman. He's big, strong guy. Like, he's hard to bring down. I think he gives them the best chance to compete. Not bashing Emory Jones, but I think Florida's got to think about their future. Like, say, if you're going to find out what Anthony Richardson's got, this is certainly going to be the week to do it. Because Georgia, like I say, they're having injuries. They lost Tyke Smith, their star safety. They've still got Lewis Sign, and they've got the corners. But there's going to be their points to be scored. So I think this should be fun, like I say. But there's definitely a choice to make a quarterback because they run different offenses.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, so Richardson, 6'4", 236, this year, 21 on 37, 392 yards, 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and 28 rushing attempts for 348 yards and 3 touchdowns with an 80-yard run to the house in that. So the Cam Newton comparison is absolutely seen, and Ashley has just chimed in saying the Florida fan he knows, and I presume he knows a few Florida fans in that rivalry. The Florida fan he knows prefers Richardson way more than Emory Jones. So there we go.
Yeah, he just looks to be better across the board, just a bit more dual threat dynamic. So let's hope Florida make the right decision when it comes to picking their quarterback this Sunday.
Absolutely.
Next up, like I say, and one of the last games we've got to talk about is this could be a sneaky good game. You've got North Carolina, who have not been ranked all year. Sam Howell has gone about his business fantastically. Like, he has had a poor O-line. He's only had Josh Downs, and there's been no defense. Like, he's been scrambling all over. I saw him last week. He's been getting smacked. He's been getting sacked. Little guy comes up swinging every time and again. And then you've got this very inconsistent Notre Dame. That's how I will call them, because they love to play at least 2 or 3 quarterbacks every game because they just can't trust one guy behind it. I will note Kyle Hamilton is out. Like I say, I think he'll be back this year, but he suffered, I think, a right ankle injury last week. So he will sit out this game. Sam Howell will be licking his lips. Like, you've got a deep threat like Josh Downs. They don't have their star safety. I think I know what they're going to want to do, but these two teams can score points, but they can also concede points. I cannot say how this one will go, but this one has got to be an upset alert just because Notre Dame are ranked 11.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you guys have been telling me all along Notre Dame are frauds and UNC are a bad team, but Sam Howell is reflective of that. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this one goes, especially at the Fighting Irish as well. So that home crowd, and we've seen, the videos of what that crowd are like. They are raucous. It's going to be an interesting atmosphere, especially with no Hamilton, who's still, everyone's draft darling, the number 1 player on many people's everyone's draft boards right now. So shame he's out, but like you say, I think they expect him to come back. If not, he's ruled out for this weekend, possibly back next weekend or the weekend after.
Yeah, like I say, it could do him well. If it's serious, he will consider shutting himself down for preparing for the pros, which I wouldn't blame him, because like I say, even though UNC, their record is deceiving with how many wins they have, they've made hard work of it. They've been one of the hardest teams to watch all year. I have not enjoyed watching their football because it's kind of like going to the dentist and you hear the drilling. Like I say, then you get through the procedure and you're like, oh, that was all right. Like I say, no, they just make hard work of everything, unfortunately.
It's one of your best euphemisms. There is one more ranked matchup to talk about. Penn State at Ohio State.
Oh, yep, sorry, I missed that one. I believe they're going to have a fully fit Sean Clifford, which for Penn State is massive. Like I say, they're licking their wounds right now. After that 9 overtime loss, they're tired, they're frustrated. James Franklin is probably pretty mad, and they're just coming up against a juggernaut. Like, that's not what you want, is it? After coming off such a big offset loss, to come up against maybe the third best team in the nation, despite their 5th ranking. Like say CJ Stroud, you've got Travion Henderson, those freshman darlings. Like say they are a fountain of youth, and I've got a feeling they're gonna douse this Penn State team, and they could very well run away with this one quickly if Penn State don't keep their heads above water.
Absolutely. I mean, Penn State are just so frustrating because at times they look like they're going to actually really do something highly rated. I think they were the biggest faller in the AP poll this week. And they deserve it because it wasn't a good performance last week. And coming into this, they are against the informed team. So I think that I've read something about this, so apologies if I'm remembering it wrong, but I think CJ Stroud started the year not great. Had to be benched, took a game off, came back, and has looked like an absolute world beater. So it's like 2 completely different quarterbacks. So first 3 games, and then he was benched in favour of McCord, and then he's come back for the next 3 games. And those last 3 games against Rutgers, Indiana, and who's that? That is Maryland. They've scored 52, 66, and 54 points. Like, you can't ask for more from him, and the expectations for Stroud were high coming into the year, so it's hard to see Penn State winning this one, really.
No, like I say, it's going to be probably damage limitation for Penn State. If they won't want to give up too many points, they're not going to stop. They can't stop the passing game and the running game. You have to pick one of their poisons, aren't they? If they try to stop Henderson, like say Chris Olave, Grant Wilson, like I say, they'll have a field there. Like say, if they try shut down with the okay corners they have, then they're going to get chewed up on the ground. Like say, I think shutting down Stroud for that one game, like they cleared his head, like just put an arm around him and said, look, like say, we knew we had to throw you in there. Ryan Day, like it worked. Like say, look how prominent the offense is now. Like I question if, like say, maybe it's too late now for Clemson to do that. They've got past the point where it's sitting him for a week, or maybe giving him a telling off DJ. Maybe he won't learn from it, but it's worked for Ohio State, and like I say, they're right now one of the most dangerous teams to play, and this one could get ugly. Like I say, James Franklin, it's going to hurt this weekend, like I say, because they're pretty much outmatched across the board, and this will be another loss. And it's not often it has been such a long losing streak.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's a massive game for Ohio State because they've got 3 ranked matchups left in their 5 games, and the other 2 that are unranked are Nebraska and Purdue, who are potential banana skins. Purdue always seem to kind of pull a result out when no one's expecting it, and the expectations are high, and they seem to do awful. So they're unranked, so that could be a dangerous one. But they get through Penn State this week, and then they finish up with MSU and then UMich to finish, a game that I will be at, I hope. So, it's going to be an interesting one to finish off the year, because if they get through all of those, Ohio State against UMich could be a game potentially to decide the playoff players coming from the Big Ten.
It could, yeah, like you say, strength of schedule will be really important. Like say, you could say right now, with no disrespect to Penn State, Ohio State have had their easy games. They've got tough games coming up. Like say, that will boost up that strength of schedule. Like say, if they were to get by Michigan State, like say, it could be playoff intentions on the line. One of them could finish 3, one of them could finish 4. Like that game with Michigan could be losing you're out. Like say, that's the kind of territory we're talking about, and it's not even exaggerating to say that now with so many weeks left. Like say, we're at like 10th week of the pod for most teams. This is game week 8. Right, this is crunch time. We're soon going to be looking at strength of schedule. We're soon going to be predicting who's going to be that on the outside, who's going to be the top 4, and that 5th team just yapping away. Like it's going to be one of the teams we've mentioned. Like say, it could be a Michigan State, could be a Michigan. Like say, so this is really the crucial part of the stadium. I mean, season, they need to ride the hot hand while it's hot. CJ Stroud right now is hot. He's a hot potato.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a really big game for both sides. I mean, if Penn State hold out any hopes of doing anything for the rest of the season, they need to win out, and it starts here. So make a statement win if you can. And it's a very good defense. You know, can't do them down for that. So it's one of the games I'm looking forward to this weekend. There's only a few that I'm like, I must watch this, and this is definitely one.
No, I agree. Yeah, like I say. So that's it. These are the key games to look up for this weekend. Like I say, now teams are starting to play with real playoff intentions and championship intentions. It's getting down to crunch time almost. Like I say, in college, they only play 12 games. For a lot of teams now, this will be their 8th game. Like I say, if they've locked up bowl eligibility, they're now looking for loftier aspirations. Those are the best games to look at for this weekend. I know Ant's not here, but I know about the guys he's been watching this year. Like I say, Olafoshio, real shame. Like I say, he was having a stellar year. Now we'll sit the rest of it. I had my linebacker, Merlin, but Arizona State, thank God, coming off a loss, had a bye week. They've got their homecoming with Washington State, so we'll see him. Malik Willis, I don't know. He's been weird the last few weeks. Like I say, the arm's not always there. Liberty have hit their hard part of their schedule. Like I say, he had the game where I think he threw 3 interceptions. I think it was against Syracuse. But right now, I don't know. I don't know where you draft him. I feel like I'm struggling to place him right now. It's difficult.
It is difficult because with someone like that, you want them to come out looking like the oh god, why have I forgotten his name? San Francisco quarterback drafted number 3.
Trey Lance.
I
think it's like Lance in here.
But Lance came out, and I know he played FCS rather than FBS, but he came out with not many mistakes on tape. He was just unpolished. But Willis is going out there, and he's making big errors, as well as, you know, showing the tools, which are the reason why he's ranked so highly too. But it's very hot and cold with him.
Yeah, you don't even get lukewarm. You just kind of like right now, you get the good Willis or you get the not so good Willis. And it makes it hard to trust him and invest high capital in him. Like I say, I predicted a few weeks ago because we did our mocks last week. I had him in the 2nd because I feel like there's a realistic skid. I think he will slide, and he's on the snakes and ladders board right now, and he's just stepped on a snake. Like he's going down. Like say, the next player, Treylon Burks. I've got to say, when Ant picked this lad before the start of the year, I didn't really know who he was. But he's been phenomenal for Arkansas the last few years. He is a beast. No one that's nearly 6'4" and like 220, 230 pounds should be this fast. Like last few weeks, he's racking up yards, like say 80, 90 scoring plays. Like he looks sometimes like DK Metcalf on film, like when he takes a stride and he just takes off, like he's got that kind of explosiveness about him. And he's could very well be wide receiver 1 on some boards. So, like I say, Ant did good there. That was a great play to pick. Another wide receiver, Dontario Drummond, that I picked. Like, but Ole Miss, like he's leading their line. He's doing really well. Like, it's Matt Corral's favourite target this year after Elijah Moore left. He's got that nice lean 6'3" build. He's up there now. I think he's in the top 10 for yardage. Few turn. Like I say, he's got a few touchdowns, a nice average 16, 17 yards of reception. Like he's had another good week, but this week he faces a stern test. Auburn defense with Smoke Monday. It's not something you can often take the roof off of. So I think we're gonna see how strong their partnership is this week for sure. And then the other players, Trevis Hodges Tomlinson, one of my defensive backs. I picked the cornerback for TCU. Well, they didn't do so well. Like say they had the powerhouse of Oklahoma last week. Like say scoring was just not there. He shipped 50 plus points. Like say he had the tackles, but the turnovers aren't there. And I'm raising questions about it because he's got very limited size. So he's someone that I'm going to have to reevaluate, I think, at the end of the season. But no, like I say, it's been another fantastic week. More shocks. Like I say, hopefully I've got a whole page left because, like I say, this is just news of the week. Like I say, things. I expect at least 5 more head coaches will have been fired by next week, probably.
Really? Like seriously?
Well, I could see it now, like I say, because teams will be playing 8 or 9 games. Like I say, it's getting to that point where if you're at 3 or 4 wins, like you may not make a bowl game, and that's kind of the thing that keeps most people's jobs. I think in college, if you can get by on 6, 7 wins a year, some programs are built for consistency. Like I said, the firings will start pretty quickly now, I think.
Makes sense. If you get ruled out of contention, what reason is there to keep you on if you want to get rid? So that's fair play. Are there any other games out of, say, the unranked teams that you're looking at next week?
I'll just have a look.
I mean, there's a couple that stand out to me when I'm looking at the slate. So one of the later games is, I know that you're a fan of Louisville, and they're at NC State. So that's going to be an interesting one. NC State were ranked up until last week, I think.
They were, yes. NC State were ranked, I'd say, until they got beaten Miami. And Louisville are really fun to watch. I keep calling Malik Cunningham a bit like Lamar Jackson 2.0. Like, he plays like it. Like, he's phenomenal running quarterback. I'd say they played a really good game against Syracuse, not last week before. That had, like, ACC intentions. Like, they're a good team. I expect that's a very different clash of styles. Devin Leary's pretty solid passing quarterback. Malik Cunningham likes to run the ball, likes to pass. I expect these two teams, like say, this is going to be a high scorer. These two teams' defenses won't be able to handle one another. Like I say, it's going to be like 30-35 kind of game like that. And I'm going to tip Louisville just because, like I say, they're incredibly fun to watch.
I mean, if it was your pick every single time, Louisville would be one of the unbeaten sides still, I think. So there's a few other games in that late window that are really popping out to me, actually. UCLA Utah has an outside bet to be a really good game. Virginia BYU, Fresno State San Diego State. You know, those are some games that are going to produce some really entertaining matchups. But you're talking at least UK time, 12:30 to 2:15 and 2:30 starts on Saturday night. That's a late one if you're a fan.
Yeah, Utah. Well, I know why they got back into contention. Like I say, they downed Arizona State for our bye week. They've thrust themselves back into the Pac-12 South. They jumped above us. Like they're going to try to follow that up with, like say, a UCLA team licking its wounds that couldn't get past Oregon. They're very inconsistent. Maybe Utah Utes are going to get hot now at the end of the year. I don't, as an Arizona State fan. Let's say we were playing Washington State. I need someone to do us a favor and knock off Utah. Like say, I don't think it'll be this team. I think they will ride that defense again. They've got a quarterback that's taken over the reins, that they look pretty solid on both sides of the ball. BYU, they were on a torrid little run. Like say, I think they were 5-0, lost that unbeaten run, lost again. Like say, they were beaten by a bad Boise State team. Like BYU was struggling. Like the last few weeks have not gone to plan. And they need a game that can get them back on track. And taking on, I think, the quarterback with the most passing yards in the nation, Brennan Armstrong, the Virginia quarterback, the Ginger Ninja. This guy he has got like a rocket launcher for an arm. I can't believe how little people are talking about him. Like, he is putting up some phenomenal numbers at Virginia this year. They're just too inconsistent, unfortunately. But he's probably going to give them hell, and he's going to make that defense pay for it.
Brennan Armstrong, 239 completions, 3,220 yards, average 8.7 per throw, 23 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and 22 sacks.
Yeah, bad O-line, and he's still I think he's the only quarterback that's past 3,000 yards. He has to get rid of that ball so quick. He just literally snaps the ball and he goes, oh, someone's going to be down there, and they are. Like, they're fun to watch, like I say, because it's such a pass-heavy offense.
There's some really big games on this slate. I know we can't get into all of them, but FSU at Clemson, I'm sure that Ash is salivating at the prospect of having to face that Clemson side at the moment. You've got Boston College at Syracuse, Minnesota at Northwestern, TCU at Kansas State. These are all games. Purdue at Nebraska, and the way Purdue are going at the moment, I know Nebraska are no good, but who knows what's going to happen in those games. There's going to be really close games, or at least entertaining, fun to watch games this week.
I agree. I think this week the unranked matches are better than the ranked matches. Like, say, Florida State, like, I can't believe I spent 5 weeks trashing on them, and now, like, back-to-back wins, like, say, taking on a bad Clemson team. Like, I'd love to see them take Clemson to the cleaners, because it's very doable right now.
Oh man, it's going to be a terrific week. I can't think what you and Ant are going to do this time next week when there are all those games to cover. It's going to be a 4-hour pod at least.
Yeah, I think next week we'll be starting at 7 p.m. just to create a 3-hour window.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else you want to cover off before we finish?
No, I think that's it. Like I say, it's been another very busy week. Like I say, if anyone has any questions, like I say, because I know we've not had any positions to look at, like I say, looking at you, Ferg, like I say, anyone feel free to comment, tweet, ask us to look at something. Like I say, in the next coming weeks, we're going to, like I say, at the end of the year, we'll redo a mock, but within, I'd say, the next week or two, we will start working out who our playoff contenders and who are pretenders. So we'll do a contender and pretender week. We'll list some teams and give some reasons there. And I think, like I say, I'll drum up some positions to look at, like I say, from some lesser known names for Lions fans to look at. So everyone just fire over, like I say, go to Twitter, ask us things, and we'll give shout outs, everything.
Yeah, DMs are open on Twitter at ROTL_UK. So if you have any questions or just tweet at us directly, we'll get on that on the next episode. Otherwise, next episode on the main podcast is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles preview show. That is tomorrow, Thursday, 28th October. Next college football podcast this time next week, 3rd of November, Week 9 in review, Week 10 preview. Otherwise, our socials, Royal the Lions UK on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Don't forget to like and subscribe on this video, on wherever you get your podcasts. Any reviews you can give us, gratefully accepted. Would really appreciate your feedback. Good or not. I mean, I know guys are like, oh, if you want to give us a 5-star review, but no, if you want to give us a 3 and say, you know, you can improve this way, I don't care. Like, the ranking doesn't matter, but the content does. So give us your honest feedback. We really appreciate you listening. Facebook group for worldwide fans, Detroit Lions fans, UK One Pride Worldwide. You'll see such photos as our own Ryan Farden living it up in LA, watching our own Lions, pointing to his England flag on his Detroit Lions gear. That was a great one to see over the weekend. On the web, royalthelionsuk.com, I've been a bit slack, I must admit, but I'm going to get back on the wagon doing some writing on that soon, especially with, you know, we're halfway through the college season, almost halfway through the NFL season now, coming up with this week and the bye upcoming. So more than ever now, the Lions 0-7. Focus is turning to the draft already, and demand is coming. So, you know, it is becoming something which is going to be more and more important in the next few weeks. If you want us to focus on anything long-term as well, let us know. Matthew Stafford said he think he just saw his picture on Lions Wire. You're absolutely right. It was on there for sure. Ashley says 1-7 incoming. I hope you are right. We'll break that down tomorrow night. Thank you for having me on, Ryan. It was really good fun, actually. I was saying to my girlfriend, you know, I've not really had too much time for college football in terms of watching or being on the pod, but I love talking about it. The storylines are somehow more exciting, perhaps, than in the NFL. There's so many teams, so many things to look at, from the uniforms to the mascots to the rivalries, because there are more teams. There's more going
No,
on.
yeah, like I said, yeah. College football, like I say, is a bit like Love Island. It's a bit like a reality TV show. Like it's like I say, what you see is not what you get. There's always things going on behind the lines that you just kind of hear about this stuff. Like say, like we're going to look at like say what happened with Washington State dismissing all their staff for not getting the vaccine in time because of their state employees. Like that's going to be something interesting to look at. I'm going to see how that pans out because there's going to be legal action. But like I said, there's always some of these controversial storylines. Like I say, there's things that always just funny things. Like saying always these simple little quirks. Like say, everyone watching, I apologise for technical difficulties earlier. They kind of threw me off my mojo a bit. Like say, I'll work on that for next time. So thanks for sticking with me.
I think it ran smooth, mate. I wouldn't worry about that. But anyway, time to sign off. So just remains for me to thank Ryan to let me on in favour of Ant. And I say in favour of Ant, Ant's, working, and he's been worked like a dog. So I feel bad for him being out there, and he may be watching now. And, miss you, man. He'll be on next week, I hope, because quite honestly, if I look like I know what I'm talking about, I'm pretty amazed. But there we go. Anyway, cheers, Ryan. Thank you to everyone for watching. One Pride.
Yep, one Pride.